biggest thing that you can do is pay attention to textures, okay? So if we look at this picture of Cate Blanchett, lovely actress, if you notice, I painted all over this picture because what I want you to focus on is getting rid of actual problems in the picture instead of like making it look like she's not a human being. See how she's got like, you know, human skin with like folds and wrinkles. And I purposely picked red carpet pictures, not magazine covers, because those are already like heavily airbrushed. So don't worry about like making her any more young, beautiful, enter like whatever, you know, adjective you want. We're just going to worry about getting rid of these lines as if they were never there. And the challenge is going to be to match shadows, textures, pixels, okay? So we've got this soft, blown out area, right? Like this is obviously done with a professional camera. They focused on her face and the background is like blown out and blurry, yes? So this has got a different texture than, say, her skin. Then you've got the hair, okay? We've got some individual strands of hair that we can see here, yes? And then we've got, oops, I didn't mean to do that. Then we've got more hair, but this is now, again, blown out, blurry. Even though it's all on her face, you can see the way the camera is, right? The point of focus is here, and then the focus starts to fade as you can see her like diamond earring, that's probably worth more than my life, is a little bit blown out, right? So the first thing you do, you kind of diagnose the problem, okay? We're going to be like doctors. You're going to see where your problem areas are. I like to start with like the easy stuff first, which I'm going to guess is probably her forehead. Now, zoomed out, her forehead kind of looks like it's really smooth, perfect, but oops, why do I keep doing that? I got to get out of this tool. It does have texture. Oops, stop it. Why is my space bar not working? Okay, I don't know why. So you have to mimic the texture here. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys a couple tools that make it easy. All right, so I'm going to hold this down. And right here we have the spot healing brush tool, patch, content to wear move tool, which we'll use later, and red eye tool. What I want to do is I'm just going to show you how this works. So I should have done a small area, just a patch. Hold on a second. Let me just paint like a couple pimples in. Okay, there, she's got some pox now. This is going to drive me crazy. My space bar usually turns my mouse into a hand to move it, but it's not working right now. All right, so I've got my spot healing brush. See how it's tiny, okay? I can control it up here with my size. Hardness is important when doing this project, okay? So 100% hardness is going to give you a perfect edge. I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm just going to make this a little bit larger. I'm going to exaggerate. If I click on this one time, that actually worked okay. It's kind of, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but you can actually see exactly where I hit the circle. Let me go to a different place. Okay, so do you see how it changed the pixels and there's actually like the ghost of a circle? This is where you really have to kind of like become like a really tough critic. When you use the spot healing brush tool, what it does is it uses an algorithm to say, oh, okay, this red dot needs to go away because it's underneath the brush. This is the area that the user is selecting. It notices that it's in this like peachy, pink, yellowy area. So it's Photoshop guessing that it should match the surrounding texture, color, and tone, okay? So many times it's going to work like a charm for things that are just individual circles, okay? When you get into larger areas, it might have trouble. I'm going to go to the eyebrow, actually. This is going to slow me down so bad not having my spacebar work. Okay. So if I start here, and I always go a little bit at a time, because if you notice, because I'm not getting the entire blue line, it kind of doesn't know exactly how to reconcile the difference between the peachy area surrounding it. It's not like that pimple, right? It's not totally surrounded. So it's struggling. It's like, hey, I see what you're trying to do, but it's not really the right tool for the job. Okay, the healing brush. Okay, if I click on it once, it says Option click to define a source point to be used to repair the image. That's not an error. There's no yellow like hazard sign. Listen to what it's saying. I look at my keyboard, Option, and then click. We all have an Option key, so let's see what happens when we do that. If I hit Option, what happens to my mouse? It turns into one of those like little target things. All right, I'm just gonna click right here one time. Option click. I just did what it says. Now, oh, look at that. See the little like crosshairs to the left? It's trying to copy this area. So it's kind of working, but not really. It's like slowly getting rid of the blue, which isn't a bad thing. Sometimes you need to like work a problem in multiple steps to get it the way you want it. Just like with the zombie project, right? Like sometimes you added a thing, but then you had to change the color, then you had to change the opacity, then you had to change the mode, right? Would you agree that any change worth making usually takes more than one step? So I'm going to Option click now down here because this part of the blue is a different texture and color and tone. Like this is kind of like a grainier look. So you're really like analyzing the picture. All right, you know, it's kind of working. It's kind of doing its thing. So I'm going to go with it for now. Like a little bit is better than nothing, right? Kind of like you're almost doing like makeup. It takes a few extra steps, okay? So if I kind of keep Option clicking and then painting it in, it's kind of getting there. It's looking like a bruise. All right, maybe there's another tool that could use. Let's really quickly switch to the patch tool. Let's see what this is all about. I'm going to make a weird mistake with it so you can see how it works. Okay, patch tool. What happens when I click? Oh, it's a selection. Okay, so what is this? I'm going to circle this problem area, and then I'm going to drag. So do you see how like where I'm dragging, it's showing me a preview of the area I'm dragging it to? Okay, I did undo that for a second. I'm going to show you what this really does. Okay, let me do this big area. All right, I'm not saying this is a good idea. What did it do? What did the patch tool do? Grace, go ahead. All right, so it takes the area that you drag the selection to and puts it like over the area you're trying to replace. All right, so it can be a little problematic. I'm doing a recording right now. It worked. All right, so I'm going to show you how I would probably handle it using this tool for this project. I would take a problem area and then find an area that has a similar texture and go a little bit at a time. Baby steps usually work better than large fixes. It's like the person who tries to like get a shortcut and do it all at once. It might not look bad, but it's not going to look great. You know what I mean? So I'm going like a little bit at a time. I'm trying to find areas that copy the texture. I've got a little bit of a blue shadow, but I can kind of like go back and fix those areas after I get rid of the blue. Right? Do you see how it's kind of looking bruised? I can fix that as I get rid of it. All right. If I go back to my eyebrow, I can select this area and I can even copy like the texture of an eyebrow. Okay, so it's very similar to the zombie project in the sense of little baby steps and experimentations. Okay. Now, one thing I want to talk about that's dissimilar to the zombie project. I'm only working on my background image. Every single change that I have made has all been done on my original image. Okay, so I should have showed you guys this step first. I don't want to go back in time and redo all of this, but what I want to do going forward, very first thing you should do is actually duplicate this layer. So that way you can go like before and after. And if you mess up something, because these are destructive techniques, we're actually altering the pixels. You can go back in and you can actually adjust things. Okay. So you want to be zoomed in. You want to be paying careful attention. Some things might work as far as like you change the texture. That looks really weird. Edit, undo. Go back in my history. I don't like that. You know, you're going to have to kind of like experiment with it. And at least if you have a background layer, oops, I didn't mean to do that. I keep forgetting that my space bar is not working. Then you can at least like go back to your original. Okay. Another tool that you're going to use that I'm going to show you right now. This is the clone stamp tool. Again, if you forget how to do something, you're going to have this video that I'm recording right now to review. But you've got these little animations that are in Photoshop. So it just copied all those cherries, what I'm going to show you. Okay, I'm going to make my brush a little bigger. I'm using the bracket keys to make my brush larger, just FYI. If I hit Option, click, let me make it 100% opacity. I'm going to Option click on the middle of her eyeball. I can paint in. I'm copying her eyeball. Do you see how the little target is like moving with me? I could give her, like, make her a cyclops, right? Okay, again, because she's not this like hard robot person, she's like a soft like human. She's not as soft as back here, but I got to kind of find the right amount of hardness. I can also use this tool. I'm Option clicking and then I'm kind of painting. That might be too large of a circle. I gotta make my circle smaller. Maybe I work a little bit closer to where I'm trying to copy, and I can kind of like paint in where, oops, stupid spacebar thing. I'm going to paint in the correct texture. And I'm going to go a little bit at a time because I want to make sure that I'm borrowing and sampling from good parts of the skin. Okay. So I've got some hard lines. What I do sometimes is like I'll get rid of the problem. I'm just going to kind of do this quick. It's not perfect. You guys can see like probably shadows of my brush. That right there I gotta undo. Sorry, it'll drive me crazy. See how her head starts to shade, like how it starts to get shaded because it's going back in space. When I get to this part of the line, I'm gonna want to sample from closer to over here to match the lighting. So the closer you are to the source, probably the better that it'll match. Okay, I did that all at 100% opacity. Now, do you guys see these kind of like weird marks? Yeah, okay. Now that like the big problem's gone, maybe this is a good time to go to my patch tool and I can kind of like just smooth out the textures. So I can go, I'm going to make it a little smaller. I got this area that's not great. Kind of go to an area that's a little bit smoother. Or maybe kind of do one of these and go like here. So what I can do is kind of try to smooth things out as I go along. Okay, this is like a bruised area. Kind of go here. Right, so you're trying to kind of like fix it up. All right, the more time you spend on it, the better it'll probably be. All right, I made it challenging on purpose, but do you guys see how it's slowly starting to kind of like get better? A big thing about retouching, you've got to zoom out. You got to zoom in occasionally. You're too close to something, you can't see some of the problems. We zoom out, I can actually see more imperfections on her forehead zoomed out. Do you guys agree? Do you see it? Okay. It's going to get challenging when you get to this area. You're going to maybe want a little bit of the patch tool. You're going to want maybe a little bit of the rubber stamp tool. I still call it rubber stamp even though it wasn't. So right now I've got a previously defined source area. I'm going to edit undo that. Every time I want to use my rubber stamp tool, I like always have my keyboard close by so I can do Option click and kind of find like the right area. And I test it out. Like, I don't like just go with the very first click. Okay. So I try to find things that look natural. And sometimes I go smaller or bigger with my brush to smooth things out. Sometimes I lower the opacity to kind of like layer different tones and textures. Take my time. Sometimes opacity is my friend, sometimes it's not. Yep, I gotta fix that area. The thing with with opacity is you just gotta make sure you get rid of any imperfections. So this is why I do a background, keep the background original, and make edits on a different layer. So I can kind of be like, oh wow, this is where I came from, okay? I'm gonna show you guys the hair. Ugh, spacebar. You don't realize how reliant you become on something until you don't have it. All right, the hair. What tool do you guys think would probably be the best starting point for the hair? What do you think, Grace? The stamp. That's what I would probably start with. If you do this, oops, hold on. If you do this, that's essentially like what Snapchat would do. It would, you know, not a great idea. Her hair is multi-faceted, multi-layered. You got to work slow. Hair takes time. Oops, stupid spacebar. Option click. There's going to be, I try to follow like the main lines across. I'm going smaller with it. And it's like a dance. I don't commit to anything right off the bat. I kind of go a little bit at a time. This is when I would be in the office and I would put my headphones on and I would literally tune out the world. The reason we can't do something like this, oh, hold on. If you did this the whole way, it's not actually horrible, but it's not great. I'm trying to purposely make mistakes, which like feels unnatural. Hold on a second. Okay. So let's pretend that this is perfect. First off, we see this interruption, right? Also, your eye is going to recognize patterns and natural things. If you were taking a picture of the beach and there were waves coming in, and then in that same picture, there's like, all of a sudden you didn't realize it, like a garbage bag came in with the wave, but it's like the perfect sunset picture. If you wanted to get rid of the garbage bag and you simply copied and pasted that repetitive wave, your eye is going to communicate to your brain, there's this perfectly matching pattern in nature that doesn't make sense. Okay? If you, let's pretend these lines were perfect. See this like really bright highlight, those two like hairs? Let's say you keep using that over and over again. Like, this isn't bad, right? But it's like, it's not professional. Let's pretend I did a really good job on this. But I see that over and over and over again. Okay? It's nitpicky, but my job is to teach you guys kind of like the best and most professional way of doing things, right? Not horrible. If it was like, you know, a 2-inch image on your phone, if this was a billboard, it would be a problem, okay? Now, obviously, these are like exaggerated problems, but they're not really. Is this harder or easier than getting a garbage truck out of a Manhattan city, right? These things exist. Last thing I'm going to show you over here, all right? Who thinks this is probably the easiest part of the project? Anybody? All right. There's some easy things about it, and then there's some hard things about it. When you're working with a really soft area, what do I want to use? I'm going to go back to rubber stamp for a minute. I'm going to make my brush bigger, and I'm going to make it as soft as possible. Actually, I'm not going to make it as soft as possible. I'm going to show you what I wouldn't do first. Okay, so right off the bat, if you're going to like kind of change this background or anything like that, you really need to be careful that your softness matches the softness of the background. So if I lower make this, less hard, it'll look more natural and fade into what like the existing texture is. Does that make sense? There are some areas, because this is nondescript, meaning like it doesn't matter what blobby color it is. You also could simply use your eyedropper tool, and you could like use your brush on a soft, lightly opaque, bigger, softer brush. You could even kind of like paint in areas, because you know that it's nondescript. It's not like a New York skyline or something that has to be matching. I'm going to go back to my brush. We could like hide mistakes by like painting in different areas. We can also use the rubber stamp tool, make that a little bit bigger, lower my opacity, option click, and kind of just like fade these areas away. But if you do it with like a light opacity and a soft brush, you can probably avoid getting any hard lines. You just got to kind of like go a little bit at a time. Option click, paint, option click, paint. And you can like slowly start to get rid of it. Okay. So I'm going to put this on Schoology. I'm going to deploy this to you. I just want you to work on CATE Blanchett for like the first hour of the day. Practice this. Have a lot of failures. If you do something and you are like, that was horrible, why did I do that? You can always make another background copy. You could take a quick screenshot of it. I would love to see your failures. Like when I had like that bruised, weird forehead, obviously like it wasn't the greatest thing, but what I did was I kind of kept going with it. So what I'd like you to do is occasionally take a few screenshots of your process. What I will do is, while you're working on it, in like 20 minutes, I'm going to say, take a screenshot. And then in another 20 minutes, I'm going to say, take a screenshot, no matter where you are. And then we'll have this collection that will show me like what you have done. I'm just going to shut off the recording.